Welcome back to my YouTube channel. This is Kim Saeed, and today's video is going to be the first in a series for empath empowerment. And this first video is going to talk about boundaries, because this is something that empaths have an extremely difficult time with, setting boundaries and standing up for themselves. If this topic is something that sounds interesting to you, make sure you subscribe so you will be notified when I publish my other videos in this series. So somewhere along the way, you may have determined that you may be or even are an empath because you feel things very strongly. You're very sensitive to the energy in rooms when you enter them. You're very sensitive to other people's emotions, and you just seem to be intuitive in general. Or maybe you go to the nail salon, and while you're sitting there, 3 different people sit beside you, and every single one turns around and starts telling you their life story. These are very common things that happen with empaths. Empaths have this sort of warm and welcoming feeling about them that a lot of people are drawn to, but it can also seem to attract people who would want to exploit your kindness and your patience and your understanding. So that's why we're going to be talking about Boundaries 101 for empaths today. All right, so first of all, when we talk about boundaries, where do you even start? What I generally recommend is that you take some time to sit down and reflect on things that don't resonate with you, or things that make you feel bad about yourself or about life in general, or things that just don't set well with you. This is the first step. And this might take you a day or two, because it's one thing when someone wants to order pepperoni pizza, but you don't eat meat, right? But it's another thing if someone says or does something that is sort of a personal attack, or it's something that you don't agree with. The first step would be to sit down and write down a list of at least 10 things that you would consider someone violating your boundaries or deal breakers. Because being an empowered empath includes having a strong sense of self and knowing what things you will and will not stand for. That's the beginning. That's the first step to becoming an empowered empath. So what I'll do here is just give some of my own examples of things that would be a boundary breaker for me, okay, in a relationship. The first thing for me, I don't entertain people who lie. If I find out someone in my life is a liar, I go ahead and cut that anchor and sail away, because you can't have relationships where trust is not present, not even as a friend. Now, it's different if you have a coworker or someone who's not really part of your life and you know they're a liar. There's not a whole lot you can do other than getting another job, so you just avoid that person. But if it's someone in your life who is in your inner circle and they constantly lie, and maybe you've tried to talk to them about this before and then continue lying, at that point you have to determine, is this something I want in my life? Is this situation going to help me become empowered if I keep entertaining that person who constantly lies to me? Because you can't trust anything they say. And so you're just wasting your time and energy on that person when you could have all that time and energy that you could invest elsewhere, whether it's self-care, other important relationships, maybe you want to learn something, or just go out in nature. Those would be great ways to spend that time and energy instead of entertaining someone who always lies. Another boundary breaker for me in my personal relationships, I'll say my romantic relationships, is I don't agree with porn, and I have different reasons for that. It's not because I'm frigid or I don't enjoy sex, but I don't enjoy when a partner watches. So somewhere along the way, I decided, okay, in my dating life, if I discover that my partner is watching, that I'm not going to tolerate that. I'll just end the relationship. And once I made that decision and I stuck with it, knowing that I wouldn't tolerate it, and I really meant it, then that's when the universe started sending people to me as partners who didn't watch. I am now living with my partner. We've been together a year now, and he doesn't watch. We are so much into each other, and we have such a beautiful reciprocal relationship. We don't need any of that, and he doesn't need any of that. And this is important to me because I consider to be a form of infidelity. And whether you agree with that or not, if that's not one of your deal breakers, that's fine. Although I would imagine it causes problems in most relationships. But if you're not cool with it, don't pretend that you're cool with it. And then also, on top of that, if you make it clear that it's not something you agree with, then you need to hold to that. You don't agree with it. And so if it's something they continue doing, then you either stay and tolerate it and be miserable, or you decide to leave that relationship. Another thing that I don't enjoy is hearing things that are a little bit misogynistic maybe, or objectifying to women. When I first started dating my partner, he made a couple of comments about, women on TV about their breasts. And not that I was jealous, I just felt like the women, the actors who were on the screen were so accomplished. I just felt like it was an insult to them for them to only be seen for that part of their body. And so I just mentioned it to my partner. She's beautiful. She does have a nice, rack there, but I really prefer if you don't say these kinds of comments, because I feel like it's a bit of an insult, because here she is, this accomplished actor or actress, and she's just so brilliant and awe-inspiring that I don't think she should be reduced to her breasts. And so he's never made a comment like that since then. And this is why things work out so well for us, because we are willing to compromise, and he listens to me when I talk to him. And likewise, if he tells me something, I listen to him and I compromise. And that's what really healthy, reciprocal, loving relationships are all about. Listening, compromising, and caring about the other person's feelings about things, whether or not they're important to you. Another boundary for me, and I also included this on my soulmate wish list when I was ready to manifest a partner, is I wanted someone who would be kind to my children. I have 3 sons. One's 24, one just turned 21, and one is 13. That's something that's important to me. And my current partner is extremely loving and caring towards my children, all 3 of them. So these are just examples of things that you might consider to be your boundaries and deal breakers. You have to have these. You have to know yourself, and you have to know what things you are willing to allow and which things you're not willing to allow. So sitting down and figuring out what your boundaries and deal breakers are. Now, the hard part comes when you start implementing these boundaries and you start expressing them to people who are used to you tolerating certain things. And this is where things begin to get difficult if you are in a relationship or a friendship where you have just brushed things under the rug. This is why some empaths are considered exhausted or disempowered, because they're allowing things to happen that are out of alignment with who they are and what they want out of their relationships. Being an empath does not mean that you are here to be a doormat. It doesn't mean trying to see the best in people when maybe there's really nothing there to see. But when you start enforcing your new boundaries, this is a period that's going to be very uncomfortable. People are going to get angry, especially if it's a romantic partner, and it's very likely that that relationship will not work out because people are used to the old you, right? The exhausted empath who doesn't even have any energy to try to have boundaries. You just let things happen around you and hope for the best and hope that one day people are going to start appreciating you and start treating you better. But that usually does not happen when we're in relationships with manipulators, abusers, or people who are just self-centered, because your relationship with them has been really working out for them, but maybe just not for you. But this is where the difficult part begins. It's generally not an easy transition to go from being an exhausted or disempowered empath to being an empowered empath, a strong empath, because empowered empaths have learned to save their healing energies for people who will benefit from them. They have learned to let go of toxic and draining people. And oftentimes this even includes family members. Being an empowered empath means that you are ready to go on a journey that honors you, honors who you are, and you are engaging in self-respect, taking up for yourself and your preferences and your likes and your dislikes. So when you start to implement those boundaries, prepare yourself ahead of time, especially if you're dealing with someone like a narcissist, because you will be met with a variety of different things depending on how your narcissist responds. They could say, yeah, you're right, I'll stop doing that, and then you fall for it, but then half an hour later they're back to doing the thing. Or maybe they rage at you. They rage, they throw things, and then they leave and they stay silent for a few days. Expect these sort of things. And this is probably going to involve some element of detachment from that relationship, romantic or otherwise. Because as long as you have a toxic, manipulative, selfish person in your life who likes to overstep your boundaries and violate your boundaries, you are not having room for healthy relationships. You're not having room for self-care because you're so tired all the time putting out fires and cleaning up after other people and letting them do what they want despite how it makes you feel. You're just exhausted. But when you start letting go of those toxic people who are taking advantage of you and your kindness, then you're making room to bring in good things. It's only by detaching from these types of relationships, spend a period of healing and deprogramming, then that's a really great time for you to then sit down and figure out what your boundaries and deal breakers are. Because you're going to need those for any new relationships you form. And you're going to need to be willing and able to walk away when red flags start popping up or when someone starts violating your boundaries. You have to be at a place where you can walk away and mean it. And that's what empowered empaths do. They don't feel guilty for saying no. They don't feel guilty for walking away when they need to. And that's where we want to get you to a place of empowerment. I hope that's been helpful, and I'll see you in the next